So if you've never tuned in before, you know, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about my childhood home that burnt down in 2012, and it was a hospital since 1908. And I'm going to consult my notes and see what kind of stuff I wanted to touch on. So remember when I showed you this photo and I told you the framed in part over here, this little frame is what we're talking about, and that this was the only photo that exists. Okay. It is a picture of me, you know, and whatever. It's not just a picture of the wall. I wish it was, but it isn't. And here it is, man. Here's the picture that I didn't think I had that shows this phantom window that was made into shelving. It's right behind me in this picture. I had to lighten this up a little bit so that you can see it. That's it. And it was pretty big. So as you can see, they just built it into shelving, and it's kind of pretty, you know. Out of all of the other phantom windows and stuff, they were framed differently. Like, this seems older than any of the other phantom windows. So those two smaller windows are what is really interesting to me, because like those small windows, first of all, that's giving like 1800s. The other smaller window on down, like on the left side of the office door, that shelf that they made went through the whole wall. Like, you could reach through it. You know, that's why we taped it off. I don't really actually know why we fucking taped it off, because like, why did we do that? Like, it was kind of ugly. Like, why would we do that? I really don't know. Maybe it was to keep the cold air out, because we didn't exactly have like popping heat when I was a kid. I just remember sitting in the front office at my computer. I'm in a military issued sleeping bag. Okay. And it's dark. Everything's lit up by the light of my monitor. I've got a space heater at my feet, and I can see my breath like smoke. And I was probably 15 or 16 at that time. One time I had a space heater sitting right here in my bedroom, dude. One night I was watching Spinal Tap, man. And that fucking space heater caught on fire. Like, the fan, like, just started making this rattly sound, and like flames were coming out of the top of it. And I jumped up and unplugged it from the wall back here. I actually saw a fucking space heater catch on fire, dude. That's like, once that it was like a metal space heater. Once that happens, dude, you never want to use that shit again. I'm so for real, because I mean, certainly never leave the fucking room. You know what I mean? Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. I've never seen anything else like that. This is actually a really good quality photo, but I simply do not know what year this was from. So, but you can really see these. I don't know what that is back there, maybe another column or something, but we got to talk about the elevators, because if you ask me, like, this looks like some elevator shit, most likely. It looks like it would probably be like the elevator. This would be more toward like the center of the house, but it would be beyond this room. So if you walked outside of this room toward like the center of that area back there, it was like an open area, and then led into rooms that would be in the back of the house on that side upstairs. So this is like kind of in the center of the area, which is a problem. Okay, I'm going to explain. This up here looks like some photos that I've seen of old school, old-timey elevators. They have like this thing at the top. Am I wrong, or does that look sus? Does that shit look like it could have been elevators? But my only thing is like, why are there two elevators? Because this building wasn't that big. And so this is amazing. Okay, yesterday morning I was scraping my archives when I thought that I had found the last of everything that there was. It's a hand-drawn diagram of the second floor. My dad drew this by hand, and this was his version of it. Right? So this was the version of it as we lived there, with the changes that he made to it, like, you know, making a closet out of this area right here, and walling off the closet room to make it like its own room, and the only access to it was through the master bedroom, right? The only problem with this diagram is, why the hell is the master bedroom sticking out in a square over here, dude? Like, this master bedroom, like, it would have been above the front room, you know what I mean? So feels like he just like wanted to not think about this existing back here, like that apartment that was so bitching that I wanted to live in. It's as if he was just like, well, this is what I wanted it to be, and none of the other shit existed, you know? But other than that, right there, this is accurate for sure. And even the doorways, look at all the doorways that he put in there and stuff. If the elevators were right there with those closets, that area would be right here. And downstairs, here's the problem. That shit would have been like around here somewhere, dude. Like, like I can't wrap my head around that. The only explanation that I have is that this safe room, okay, this is called the safe room because there were safes in it. Like he kept some safes in there. It was by far the weirdest room in the house, and that is saying fucking something, because this room was very, very small, and it was like blue, and it had this like weird blue carpet, and it just smelled so fucking strange in there, dude. Very strange room. The room felt heavier than lead. That room was thick and heavy, and it was just a tiny room. So I'd have no trouble believing that there was some space in here that had been walled in long ago and became and was an elevator that had just been boxed in and walled in and forgotten about. So this space right here, I call walled in space on this diagram because I genuinely effing believe that it was just walled in space, dude. And like what was behind it. So in this rubble photo right here, you see this wall right here. This was like the pink wall. Okay, it's just scorched black by fire and whatever. But like you see this little part right here that's like hanging down, more wall that's hanging down. It looks like there's a door right there, dude, where this was just covering that door up. That looks like a door to me. But here's the other door, right? And it would have been, this one door looks like it's higher than like this one, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know if that is a door or if that's just like wood board wall behind this metal wall they eventually put up. You know, it's really hard to tell what the hell is going on in this photo right here. Remember I said history repeats itself. What happened to that building in later years had probably always been going on. It was built onto. It's like a whole bunch of decisions with the same kind of intentions made it go left from the jump. The doctor, you know, say that there was a building there. I mean, he started building onto it. You know, we were left with phantom windows from basically from the jump, right? Before 1908, really. I mean, 1908 was when those phantom windows would have been like taken care of, you know, walled in, made into shelving instead. And that shelving was pretty ornate. They tried to make it look really, really nice. I will give them that, and it does look like it could be from the early 1900s, in my opinion. The way the wood looked and felt and stuff, I remember feeling it. You know, it was like a rough texture back there. And it was a rough texture, and then this was like smoother and stuff like that, you know. I could believe that the nice shelving work was done to that phantom window in the early 1900s, and that less impressive shelving in of phantom windows like this could have taken place in like the late 40s or the early 50s or something like that. Like I can believe that, because that's not exactly ornate, you know what I mean? No shade, but it really isn't, you know. It's certainly not something they were trying to look like it was crafted beautifully, you know what I mean? Because the vibe was different and the vibe was whack when they decided to build a building in front of my home and make like part of the outside of my home the wall on the inside of the building. What were you thinking, people? You know, so when the property was acquired in 1947, it seems pretty plausible to me that at least within like a decade after that point was when all of these insane changes started getting made to this building, basically. So all of these changes were made to this building, and if there was an original building that predates 1908, they made some weird decisions with that building that they must have built onto and made it out of. So this had been going on from the start, dude. And these were different people throughout the years, right? Who fell victim to like the same intention. You know what I mean? Things went left when this place was built onto it in 1910. And previous to 1910 when it was built, there was a church there. And I wrote in my notes, they did tear down a church to build that place. And a guy was killed. I'm not superstitious like that, but it's worth considering. The guy was killed when the bell fell on him while they were tearing this church down. presumably so they could build that big rectangular building. I'm assuming they must have torn this church down for that reason. I'm assuming they probably tore that church down so they could build this. So that they could build the big building with the flat roof that pulled with water, ruined the building to the point of it collapsing over the years. What I found interesting about this photo was the crossroads room. That's it. If you look right here, that looks like a door or a doorway. This right here would have been where the apartment was, the one-story apartment that was built, but it looks like it's just like rubble. I also found, I made a side-by-side of some of the changes that were made to the building. I would assume after 1947, when ownership changed, basically. I didn't realize that they had changed this too, but as you can see right here, it's just like regular windows and stuff. But then later, that was like bricked off for some reason, and all that you were left with was these weird, long, short windows here instead of these regular windows. I'm really not sure what was up with that or why they did that, you know, to that side of it. Like, why would they do that? And this morning I made this side-by-side picture of that crazy bright little orb that was always captured in my bedroom. That's the same orb in different parts of the room. This right here was over in the corner by my computer desk. It's like the same freaking orb, dude. I find that odd. It was not rotting away like the big rectangular building was. It was not decaying at the same rate on any fucking level. The attic might have been a sort of a rougher spot just because it was straight wood, uncovered wood, the whole thing, and it was obviously closest to the roof. So if there was any failings and leaking with the roof, which the roof is always the culprit in problems with old buildings, you know, really, like, which is why the flat roof on the big rectangular building was such a heinous atrocity, you know, from the jump. It never should have been built that way, right? So the roof is always the culprit, and if the roof on my home was failing in any area, then the attic would have been where that damage was, and there was some water damage, like on my ceiling, for example. Yeah, so you can see in this photo right here, there's some water damage on the ceiling. Here's the issue, okay, is that he could get up there and repair the roof on most of this building, but this right here is where it was walled off, okay, and sticking out into the freaking side of that shitty one-story building they built, dude. So how the fuck are you gonna access where these buildings are like seamed together and covered over and all this kind of crap? Like, that shit would have been hard to get to, man. Nothing was falling apart to the point where it's like, oh, you gotta tear that down, that's unsavable. No, dude, this building was totally fine. Somebody should have bought it and should have made it a bed and breakfast or a hotel or something. Have a little bit of imagination. Have a little bit of fucking respect for history. Somebody should have bought this and done something with it. Where is Daddy Warbucks when you need him? You know what I mean? Anyway, I digress. That was a hot take. It probably gonna get edited out. This was a view from the front sidewalk down this way. So this was our mailbox right here. And further on down this way, that would have been that first one-story building that was built onto the front of my home. I wish we had a photo of it further down the wall, because that's where the front doors, the entrance doors, would have been. The one that I say was behind the wall in my bathroom. Like, I think they bricked it over from their side, and then on my side of that weird wall that bowed in, or bowed outward in the bathroom, like you could push on it and it would give a little bit. That, I think, was the door was behind it. I straight up think that the door was behind it on my side. So it's weird how they just sort of divided and separated up these windows and shit. And like, so yeah, like I said, you know, it had been a tanning salon. at one point, you know, it was a tanning salon in probably the late 80s and into the early 90s, even toward the late 90s. We inherited a tanning salon, a business built into this property, which is probably a lot of the reason my dad wanted it, you know, because it already had a business built in. He probably wanted it anyway, but I think that the built-in business probably would have been like, you know, a boon. You know, he probably thought that was really cool and handy, you know. So we inherited a tanning salon. And I don't know how long that really went on. I think it probably closed, like we closed it maybe in like 98, 99. I'm really honestly not sure how long that like carried on, but I think past like the year 2000, that shit was definitely closed, right? We closed it. I think we just decided that it was just kind of weird, just like having people in there, and we didn't want to share anymore. We didn't want to like, we wanted our privacy, I think, at a certain point, you know. And I don't know if the business wasn't going well, or if another tanning salon had been built somewhere that people preferred to go to that instead of this creepy ass looking building. No shade, of course, no shade. I'm just saying that like past the mid 90s, you know what I mean? Are you going to go here to tan? Or are you going to go to the strip mall? You know what I mean? Or wherever they might have put like a new tanning salon. I really have no clue, dude. But something happened in the late 90s and the early, like, approaching the year 2000 where my parents were just like, let's shut this shit down. So they did shut it down. And I'm glad they did, because some weird fucking... like, there were a lot of really nice people who would come in there. I remember, because I was a kid, you know, and sometimes they'd come in with their children, and their children would hang out, like, with me in the front room, and we'd play and stuff until they got done tanning, you know what I mean? So I did encounter a lot of people, because it was a tanning salon. And nothing, like, weird ever happened, except for this one kid, dude. Like, he was a bit older than me, and, like, dude, like, he was... it's one of those things that you only understand what the hell is going on when you look back on it as an adult, and it's just chilling as hell to think that that kid grew up and he probably still running around out there. You know what I mean? Holy shit. Like, what? Yikes, dude. But anyway, I even like had a couple friends, you know, who were the kids of people who would come into the tanning salon. And I remember when I was like maybe 5 or something like that, dude, there was this little girl who would come in, her mom would bring her in, and she would hang out in the front room, and she always brought like her mom would take her to Hardee's before they came to the tanning bed, and she would like eat her breakfast and stuff, you know, in the front room. And she had like hash browns, like the little hash brown thingies, like the little like tater tots. And, like, when I was, like, 5 or some shit, dude, like, I didn't understand that you're not supposed to, like, eat other people's food. Like, straight up, eat that shit. You know, so I remember, like, I would, like, be eating this girl's tater tots, like, to the point where, like, one day, like, her mom came and brought the Hardee's, but she brought me tater tots, too, so that I wouldn't, like, eat her tater tots. And eventually I learned, okay, you're not supposed to eat other people's food, you know, but I didn't know that. You know what I mean? I didn't know that. But then, like, you know, I will say, like, to this day, dude, like, if I see, like, abandoned food that, you know, you've left it behind for too long, maybe, you know, you went to the restroom or something and you were, like, gone for too long, or, like, if it seems like you're not coming back, I might just eat it, you know what I mean? So I have this thing where I do be eating the food. If it's just sitting out, if it looks abandoned, it's like, you know, I might eat that. So, anyway, and then there was a lady who... wonderful lady. She used to bring me a Snickers bar. She brought me a Snickers bar. A lot of the times that she came in there, she brought me a Snickers bar. That was really sweet. So there were some really nice people and stuff like that. You know, it's not like... and there was some crazy kids too. Like, dude, there was one kid who was like my age or a little younger than me or something like that. He was like a hellion, dude. Like, he was a hellion, dude. He would come in there and just like fuck up the front room. Just like, he would just like throw everything everywhere. He was crazy. This kid was crazy. God bless, you know, but, yeah, so there were interesting interactions that we had, you know, but, People were kind of nasty, dude. Like they would like piss in the garbage cans inside of these tanning rooms, like number 4, number 5, number 6, number 3, you know what I mean? They would just piss in the garbage can, even though there's literally a bathroom, and we had a sign saying there's a bathroom. Go fucking use that instead of pissing in the garbage can. Like, what kind of a, you know what I mean, does that? Like, so I mean, I don't think any of us were sad to close the tanning salon. I don't think we missed it at fucking all. Okay. And I must say it was probably really nice to sell off those tanning beds too. And I also wanted to mention, like, a couple times over the years, people would randomly, like, random people would come by. I remember this one man specifically. This one man came by and he was like, you know, he came to the side door and he was like, hey, you know, I just wanted to see, like, you know, the building, like, inside, because I haven't seen it since I was, like, a kid, you know. And he would be like, yeah, you know, I remember, like, this place from when I was a kid or something like that. You know, I can't remember exactly what he said, but that was the gist of it, that he wanted to see it again because he hadn't seen it since he was a kid, you know. And I remember him and my dad, you know, they were just kind of walking around, and he was just kind of like, oh, yeah, you know, that's the whatever. I wish I could pluck that guy out of fucking history, he probably dead now, man. He probably dead now. He probably 70. At fucking least, he probably 70. Okay. I wish I could pluck him from that moment and just be like, tell me everything you know, and I'm gonna get like a fucking pen and a paper, and I'm gonna sketch it, and I'm gonna write it all down. Like, I wish I could get him in front of me, you know, and ask him, what do you remember? What did it look like? You know, he wasn't the only one who ever did that, you know. Dude, I'm pretty sure, man, like I said, they kept a monkey in there, probably by my bedroom doors, where they would have kept it in that corner over there, right? Well, like, this lady back in the mid-90s, I believe it was still open as a tanning salon at that time. She was a really interesting lady. She was, I think, I don't know that she was like 100% quite right in the head, God bless, you know, but she would listen to a Walkman. She would have a Walkman, you know, back in the day, portable CD players, and they were called Walkmans, you know, portable tape players, they were called Walkmans, and you had, you know, your headphones and your little Walkman. She would walk up and down like the sidewalks with her Walkman, and she would have this stuffed monkey with like Velcro hands wrapped around her shoulders, dude. And I think, dude, and maybe I'm wrong, or maybe the monkey part had me confused about this, but I swear she would come in there sometimes and she would be like, she came in there at least once, man. Came in there and was like, yeah, I remember. They had a monkey down there. And she's like wearing the monkey. I don't know if that really happened, but if not, I know she did come in there and she was wearing a monkey, and she tried to get us to buy one. Like, apparently, like, they were for sale or something, you know. But yeah, she was an interesting lady. She dropped off the radar. Like, I don't know what happened to her, and there was a point in time where you never saw her again walking up and down the sidewalk, so she must not have been there anymore type shit. So I should do a little more in-depth discussion of this diagram at some point, but I already talked about the walled-in space, or what I strongly suspect was like a considerable amount of walled-in space right here. You know, there's just some oddities around all of this stuff, dude. And as we've seen, they had a habit from the jump of walling things off and just making these weird changes, dude, okay? I want to discuss the stairway access, though. You know, this was originally just a little tiny room. It was a long, little tiny room, okay? My dad, he cut a doorway into the wall and made it access the main stairway. So you'd step through that doorway in the wall, and you would be right here at the bottom of the steps that led upstairs, okay? From my bathroom, there's the door that leads to a little tiny set of steps. And then you go around the corner of that, and then the main stair steps are in front of you. So this is the main stairway, right? This is what I'm talking about. They made this like little room off the side of my bathroom. Like, this would be my bathroom, and they just kind of like walled it in and made this other door you had to go through in order to come around the corner here, out of here, and around the corner and access this stairway. And then that obviously was the doorway my dad made from that long room to access the stairway. And so this diagram might be a little bit off, dude, you know, in some places and with the size ratios, stuff like that. Like, I'm going on straight memory here, you know, so it might be off in some ways. And maybe there wasn't any walled in space, but the size of the rooms, dude, there was more hall wall than it made sense for there to be, is all I'm saying, when you consider the depth of these rooms over here, especially these. And that layout diagram that I drew is most likely pretty damn accurate, dude. It's certainly not got anything like this going on where it's like there was the rooms beyond this. I don't know what was the deal with this. And like, he put the windows where they would have been, you know, but this needs to be like over here, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know why he drew it like that, you know. But the rest of this, I guarantee, is like pretty bang on accurate. At some point, I just want to talk about like what comes to mind. If I was just to sit here and not have a plan of what I wanted to talk about my childhood home, about this building, about the experiences there, you know, what would come to mind and what would I want to express, you know what I'm saying? So in a session in the future, like, I do want to take that approach to it. I do want to see just like what comes out. And, you know, I am applying pressure on myself to do this and get this done, you know, and I don't know how it's going to turn out or how it's going to work out, or if it is going to work out, or if I am going to be able to do it at all, you know, as I've discussed with you guys. If you are taking this journey with me and you are enjoying this and you do think it's interesting, I thank you very much for that.